Welcome to the best ever PC benchmark channel. I'm Michael. Today, we're benchmarking Stellar Blade using AMD's Ryzen 7 9800X3D and NVIDIA's RTX 3090, both running at stock. Capture and analysis handled by CapFrameX and Riva Tuner. Let's dive right in. Let's dive into the raw performance of Stellar Blade running on the RTX 3090 at 1080p across three key presets: very high, medium, and low. No upscaling, no frame generation, just pure native power. Starting with very high settings, the RTX 3090 delivers a solid 200 FPS average. Frame pacing is smooth, with 1% lows holding steady around 100 FPS. This means even in the most intense moments, the gameplay remains fluid without noticeable drops or stutters. Visually, this preset shines with beautiful lighting effects, realistic shadows, and intricate environmental details that bring the world to life. You can clearly see the depth in the textures and the subtle volumetric lighting effects that add a cinematic touch to every scene. Moving on to medium settings, we see a healthy jump in performance. The average FPS climbs to 250 with 1% lows around 100 FPS. This preset strikes an excellent balance. It pares back some of the heavier visual effects, but still maintains most of the sharpness and detail that makes Stellar Blade visually engaging. Shadows are a bit less complex and some post-processing effects are toned down, but the overall atmosphere and clarity stay strong. This makes it ideal for players who want more consistent high FPS while keeping the game looking good. Finally, at low settings, the RTX 3090 really flexes its muscles. We're talking about a blistering 290 frames per second average, with 1% at lows at 110 frames per second. This ultra-responsive frame rate makes a huge difference for fast-paced combat, where every millisecond counts. Visual quality drops off a bit here. You'll notice simpler shadows and less detailed textures, but the game remains perfectly playable and fluid. For competitive players or those prioritizing responsiveness over eye candy, low is a fantastic option that keeps input lag minimal and gameplay buttery smooth. Real quick, over 96% of you watching aren't subscribed. Let's flip that. Hit like, leave a comment, and help us reach our 1,000 subscriber goal. Now let's get back to it. Next up, we push the RTX 3090 a bit harder at 1440p resolution, testing the same three presets: very high, medium, and low. No upscaling or frame generation, just native rendering power at a higher pixel count. Starting with very high settings, the RTX 3090 manages an average of 140 FPS, with 1% lows dipping to about 70 FPS. While this is a noticeable step down from 1080p, the gameplay remains impressively smooth and playable. The drop in FPS mostly comes from the increased pixel count and the heavier workload of very high-quality shadows, reflections, and particle effects. Visually, the game still looks stunning. The enhanced detail in textures and lighting effects make this the best possible experience at 1440p. Intense scenes with complex environments may push the GPU hard, but frame pacing stays stable enough to avoid any annoying hitching. Moving on to medium settings, we see a nice boost in performance. The average FPS jumps to 150, with 1% lows sitting comfortably around 80 FPS. This preset reduces some of the more demanding effects like volumetric lighting and shadow quality, but keeps the overall image sharp and detailed. It's an excellent middle ground for players who want smooth frame rates for fast combat without sacrificing too much visual fidelity. The RTX 3090 flexes well here, maintaining responsiveness even in chaotic firefights. Finally, at low settings, the RTX 3090 shines with an average FPS of 190, 1% lows around 90 frames per second. This is a perfect setup for gamers using high refresh rate 1440p monitors, delivering fluid and snappy gameplay. Visual quality is understandably toned down. Shadows are simpler and some effects are disabled, but the overall clarity remains good. For competitive players who value performance above all else, this preset makes Stellar Blade feel incredibly responsive while still looking decent. Now, taking a closer look at how the RTX 3090 handles upscalers on very high settings at 1080p. We're testing both DLSS and FSR3 here without any frame generation enabled. Starting with DLSS, the card averages 180 frames per second. Throughout gameplay, the visuals remain impressively sharp, with detailed textures and excellent edge smoothing. Motion clarity is stable, which helps reduce blur during fast action sequences. This means you get smooth, fluid movement without sacrificing the fine details that make the game's world immersive. The upscaling manages to preserve shadows and lighting effects effectively, maintaining that cinematic quality expected on very high settings. Switching over to FSR3 without frame generation, performance jumps slightly higher, averaging 220 frames per second. Visually, FSR 3 holds its own, delivering slightly crisper images in some fast-moving areas, especially noticeable in foliage and distant objects. While it has a bit more softness compared to native resolution, the improvement over FSR 2 is clear, especially in handling temporal artifacts and preserving fine detail during quick turns or camera pans. The balance here favors a smoother frame rate with only a minor trade-off in sharpness, which most players won't mind during intense combat moments. Overall, both upscalers perform exceptionally well, keeping gameplay buttery smooth while maintaining strong visual fidelity. Whether you prefer DLSS's slightly better temporal stability or FSR 3's edge in clarity at 1080p, the RTX 3090 ensures you're covered for an immersive and responsive experience. Now let's look at how upscaling technology helps boost performance at 1440p while maintaining great image quality. We tested DLSS and FSR 3 without frame generation enabled, focusing on the ultimate preset's visual fidelity. Starting with DLSS, the RTX 3090 averages 160 FPS. DLSS leverages AI to reconstruct frames, offering a solid balance between performance uplift and visual clarity. The image remains sharp with minimal artifacts, and motion is smooth even in fast combat scenes. It's a reliable choice if you want to maintain crispness without sacrificing too much speed. Next up, FSR 3 without frame generation pulls slightly ahead with an average of 170 frames per second. FSR 3's spatial and temporal upscaling methods improve frame rates just a bit more than DLSS at this resolution. The visuals remain impressively crisp, and the performance gains here are especially helpful for pushing closer to high refresh rate gameplay. While some minor softness may appear compared to native rendering, it's barely noticeable during actual gameplay. Between the two, FSR 3 offers a small edge in raw FPS, but both deliver excellent visuals and performance boost over native 1440p rendering. For players with RTX 3090 systems, using either of these upscalers at 1440p can make Stellar Blade feel noticeably smoother while preserving most of the game's impressive graphical detail. Now let's enable AMD's FSR frame generation, tested on very high settings without any additional upscalers, to see just how much performance boost the RTX 3090 can deliver in Stellar Blade. Starting at 1080p, the frame rate jumps significantly to an impressive 220 FPS average. This is a massive leap from native rendering, offering ultra-smooth gameplay that's ideal for fast-paced combat and highly responsive controls. While enabling frame generation introduces a slight increase in input latency, the overall feel remains very smooth and fluid, making this a great choice for players who prioritize frame rate without sacrificing too much responsiveness. Moving up to 1440p, the average frame rate holds strong at 200 FPS. Frame pacing remains excellent, even during intense combat sequences where the GPU is pushed hard. The RTX 3090 handles the extra load well, delivering a consistent experience that keeps gameplay buttery smooth. This performance headroom also makes it easier to maintain high refresh rates on 1440p monitors, providing an immersive and responsive experience. In summary, FSR frame generation is a game changer for those looking to maximize frame rates in Stellar Blade on the RTX 3090, especially at 1080p and 1440p resolutions. It offers a fantastic balance between visual fidelity and performance, perfect for both competitive and casual players alike. So is the RTX 3090 enough for Stellar Blade? Yes, the RTX 3090 comfortably handles Stellar Blade across all settings and resolutions. With upscaling and frame generation, it even hits competitive numbers. If this video helped you, smash that like button, leave a comment, and hit subscribe so we can hit 1K soon. See you in the next one.